Jerez, in springtime, is a lovely place, 100,000 Spaniards, enough sherry to float a battleship, and the southern sun beating down on a ribbon of asphalt that's seen more drama than a Shakespearean tragedy. It's lap 2, Marc Marquez, a man with more world titles than most people have pair of shoes, sitting in second, chasing his own brother. He's being sensible, which for Mark usually means he's only riding at 110% instead of 120. And then, at 200 kilometers an hour, the front of his Ducati simply decided it's enough of being a motorcycle, it quits. It goes on a strike. The bike, it cartwheels into the gravel like a discarded toy. Mark is left standing there, dusting off his leathers while his title defense evaporates into the Andalusian air. And somewhere in the Ducati garage, the panic button wasn't just pressed, it was smashed with a hammer. Welcome to the 2026 Spanish Grand Prix.
Jerez goes off the track, off goes Leclerc, through goes Hamilton!
This is the Art of MotoRacing, the only place where the analysis is sharper than a technician's scalpel, and the PR spin is strictly forbidden. We are breaking down round 4, a weekend that had more plot twists than a Netflix thriller. We had a brother on brother crime, a factory team performing a slow motion impulsion, and an Aprilia streak that finally hit a brick wall. Before the chaos, there was Marco Bezzecchi, the man arrived in Spain having won 5 of the previous races, leading all of 121 consecutive laps. He wasn't just winning, he was making the rest of the grid look like they were out on a Sunday stroll in a beige Volvo. And then you had Marc Marquez, a man who treats physical injuries like a teenager that treats a messy bedroom. They just pretend it's not there until someone forces you to look at them. At Cora, he crashed in the practice session, opened up a massive hole in his right forearm, and spent the whole weekend telling everyone, he's fine, I'm fine. And then arrived at Jerez, he admitted it was actually catastrophic. It's classic Marc Marquez strategy. Deny everything until the bone is sticking out. So Friday, it belonged to the other Marquez. Alex was the man. He was the only person to dip into the 135s, looking utterly untouchable. But then, because the universe enjoys a joke, the rain arrived on Saturday. Qualifying, it was a soggy mess. Mark, he took the pole, obviously, because he's Mark. And then Johan Zarco, he put his Honda on the front row, which is like seeing a lawnmower qualify for the Indy 500. And Jorge Martin, he got a 3-place grid penalty for getting in the way of Alex Marquez, meaning the 2024 champ. He had to start from 10th. Not exactly the plan. Alright, everyone, take a deep breath and perhaps a stiff drink. Because explaining Saturday's sprint is like explaining a plot of Christopher Nolan's film to a goldfish. It started normally, with Marc Marquez leading from the pole and Alex eventually muscling past his brother for the lead on lap 7. But then, just as Fabio Di Giannantonio was closing in, Spanish weather, it decided, let's play a joke, and the cloud simply collapsed. What followed after was 12 minutes of the most chaotic, high-speed lawn mowing in human history. Professional motorcycle riders were falling off the road as if the asphalt had been coated with liquid soap and Teflon. Toprak Razgatlioglu and Lorenzo Salvadori had a mid-race meeting that ended in a very expensive heap of carbon fiber. Marco Bezzecchi, meanwhile, his race began with a visor tear-off from Alex's helmet getting jammed in his rear wheel, which is about as likely as being struck by a meteor while winning the lottery. And then, after pitting for wets, he crashed on his outlap because his brakes, they were colder than the polar bear's fridge. Alex Marquez, who was leading on slick tires that were now as grippy as a pair of silk socks on a frozen pond, tried to crawl back to the pits at 200 kilometers an hour. But ultimately, he ended up in dirt. He later reckoned that a mere 30-second was the difference between a gold trophy and a face full of Spanish gravel. Then we have Mark. He crashed at the final corner, looked at the pit entry, and he decided it's far too away. So, in a move of pure unadulterated, how hard can it be logic, he simply pointed his Ducati at the lawn and rode straight across the grass into the pit lane. Because he crossed the timing point, the move was entirely legal, proving once again that rules of racing are merely polite suggestions if you are Marc Marquez. He hopped on his wet bike, breezed past Pecco Bagnaia, and he took the win. The final results: Marc first, Bagnaia second, and Franco Morbidelli, who started 18th and presumably used some sort of witchcraft to survive it all, came home in third. It was absolutely beautiful MotoGP madness. So Sunday in Jerez, it arrived with the kind of Mediterranean sunshine that makes you want to pack everything and move in a vineyard. But for the riders, it was business as usual. Alex Marquez, he started the day by topping the warm-up sessions, just a whisker ahead of his brother. Mark, meanwhile, was sounding uncharacteristically modest, or perhaps just realistic, claiming he was only targeting third or fourth place. For a man with more world titles than most of us have pairs of socks, that is a bit like a shark saying, it's just hoping for a light snack. When the lights went out, Mark got the kind of launch that suggests his Ducati was actually powered by rocket fuel, leading the field into turn 1. Marco Bezzecchi, he got a brilliant start from the second row as well. While Alex, he slotted into third. But Alex clearly hadn't read the script about being the other brother. Lap 1, he lunged past Bezzecchi at turn 9, and then on lap 2, at turn 6, the Dani Pedrosa corner, he dived inside Mark to snatch the lead. 100,000 Spaniards in the stands went absolutely mental, but the cheers, they were cut short. Almost immediately, turn 11, doing 200 kilometers an hour, the front tire on Mark's factory Ducati, it simply gave up on the life. Bike went cartwheeling into the gravel like a gymnast having a mid-air crisis, leaving the reigning world champion to dust himself off while his title defense it evaporated in a cloud of dust. Mark claimed he didn't understand the crash, while Bezzecchi, who was right behind him, blamed a sudden vicious gust of wind. So, wind, fitness, or combination of both? Because multiple commentators, including former riders and his own paddock peers, they were suggesting that Mark's shoulder wasn't simply right. Peter Baum, he said, the guy is still super sharp, but sharp is one thing. Having the strength to do the super quick movements on the right timing, that strength is failing. Pedro Costa said he could see Mark riding unnaturally. Jorge Lorenzo, he didn't mince his words either. Now, with Mark out of the picture, Alex, he simply checked out. Bezzecchi tried to give the chase for the first half of the race, but by lap 15, the gap was 2 seconds and growing. Bezzecchi, he later admitted, Alex was super quick in the fast flowing section, where the rest of the field was merely fast. To make a bad day even worse for Factory Ducati squad, Pecco again, his brakes decided to stop braking on lap 12, leading to another DNF. That means the Factory Ducati team now has gone 9 consecutive races without a Sunday podium. It's their worst run since 2014. It's an extraordinary state of affairs. Ducati makes the best bikes on the grid, yet they can't seem to get their own factory riders into the top step. Now, Alex Marquez, however, didn't care about the factory politics. He cruised crossed the line to take back-to-back Spanish Grand Prix victories, proving once again that in Jerez, satellite teams are the ones doing all the heavy lifting. Now let's be honest, Marc's title hopes, they are currently in the ICU. He's 44 points behind Bezzecchi. The new GP26 bike has the front end feel of a damp sponge. And even the winner, Alex Marquez, says he doesn't even know why he was fast. Aprilia, meanwhile, they have built a masterpiece in the RSGP, but Bezzecchi is allergic to sprint points. If he doesn't fix his Saturdays, title race might actually stay interesting. Monday mornings usually involves a coffee and a sense of regret, but for the MotoGP grid, it meant heading straight back out onto the track for the first official test of 2026. And honestly, what we saw was almost more telling than the race itself. Aprilia, they turned up and decided to make everyone else look like they were riding motorized bar stools. They locked out the top three spots, with Trackhouse's Ayagura sitting blistering 135.9. His teammate Raul Fernandez, he was just 5 thousandths of a second behind, which in racing terms is roughly the time it takes for a fly to blink. Along with Marco Bezzecchi in third, they were the only three riders to dip under the 136 mark. If you weren't on Aprilia, you were essentially bringing a knife to a gunfight. Marc Marquez, he was the best of the rest in fourth. He spent 68 laps testing a new aero package that actually seemed to give him some front end confidence for a change. When asked if Ducati should just give up and go back to 2024 spec bike, that was something that everyone actually liked. He was blunt. Alex was 7.5 seconds faster at Jerez this year than in 2025. In Marc's world, you don't go back to a typewriter just because you miss the clicking sound. Development has to keep moving. Meanwhile, the factory Ducati side was less of a party. Pecco Bagnaia, he finished 10th, a massive zero point 0.7 seconds off the pace. He admitted he was going around in circles trying to solve his braking issues, though he did find a few crumbs of comfort in the new aero bits. So Yamaha, they showed a rare spark of life with a new aero unit that helped Quartararo go 3 tenths faster than his best race lap, which should give him something to smile about while we're heading to Le Mans. But here's the big looming shadow over the whole paddock. We are witnessing the death rattles of the 1000cc era. Now the factories are already pouring their best brains and most of their cash into the 850cc machines for the 2027. Jerez was the second to last chance for any meaningful development on these current bikes. Before the next test in Barcelona and Valencia, the clock isn't just ticking for the current generation of machinery. It's screaming at Marc Marquez's title hopes. After the dust had settled, Alex Marquez, he summed it up perfectly. I think it's something magic. Jerez. I don't have the answers. From Friday, I was flying. There is something wonderfully poetic and slightly ridiculous about that. The man who won the race has no idea how he did it. And the man who crashed out also has no idea why he is currently picking up gravel out of his teeth. In the gap between knowing and not knowing, Jerez did what it always does. It produced a script that even a Hollywood writer on a sugar rush couldn't have dreamt up. Title fight. Marc Marquez now has 18 rounds to bridge a 44-point chasm. He's done more with less in the past, but he needs a lot of planets to align simultaneously. He needs Sunday results. He needs his shoulder to stop behaving like a wet noodle. He needs his Ducati to find the performance it apparently left in a suitcase over the winter. Meanwhile, Marco Bezzecchi is being so consistently brilliant, it's almost annoying. He just keeps showing up, banking points, and staying out of the scenery. An 11-point lead over his teammate Jorge Martin suggests that even within the Aprilia garage, the Zeki is currently operating in a different level. So next, we head to Le Mans. Different weather, completely different track, and hopefully fewer instances of front tire going on strike. But before we go, just think about Alex Marquez, 30-year-old, a two-time winner of his home Grand Prix, and currently he's making world champions on a factory machinery look like they're riding motorized tricycles, all while on a satellite bike. If that isn't the best story in the sport, I don't know what it is. Thanks for watching The Art of Motor Racing. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do the usual internet things, hit like, subscribe, and do leave a comment. And I'll see you at Le Mans.